Okay, fam. I have a question. Is it really possible not to pay tax whilst living here in South Africa as a person, as an individual? Is it really possible to escape the tax system? And this question, I get it a lot. And I want us to just go through this question. And how does this type of perspective look like in South Africa from a South African context? I will just talk about a few scenarios, and I want to maybe focus on the average person in South Africa. Is it really possible for a person not to pay tax here in South Africa, to avoid tax and not pay tax legally? Let's be specific, legally, because anything is possible if it's illegal. But let's talk about the legal framework, and let's talk about whether or not it's really possible for a person not to pay tax in South Africa. Now, if you think about a typical person who is employed, there are several instances, or rather, an instance I can think of for people who are not who are employed that would lead to them not paying tax. And I'm talking about specifically here payroll tax. Is if you are earning below the threshold that requires you to be taxed, that person will not pay tax. Because if your salary is below the threshold, I think in the current year of assessment, it's about 90,000 or so per year. I think I stand to be corrected on that one. So if a person is earning 50,000 rand from their employer, they have employment only, and they are working somewhere, they are remunerated by their employer. Legally in South Africa, that person would not pay a payroll tax. But remember, we have other taxes in South Africa. There's what is called VAT, value added tax. This person earning 50,000 per year, they still have to go buy groceries. They have to buy clothes. They have to go buy a phone. They have to live, right? They have to have entertainment of sorts. They have to pay rent. They have to do they have to have a living from that 50,000 rand that they're earning. So yes, this person might not be paying payroll taxes, but they are subjected to other taxes. And the one I can think of here that applies to many or to all of us, as long as we are purchasing goods and services in the country, is VAT. So yes, your employer is not withholding anything from you as a person who's earning an amount below the threshold, but you still need to pay VAT. So this first scenario, this person has not escaped tax. Yes, they don't pay payroll taxes, but they still have to pay VAT. That's the first instance. Now, in an instance where your employer is, you are earning above the threshold, that's obvious. Your employer will withhold and you will pay payroll taxes. Unfortunately, over and above the payroll taxes, you will also pay VAT when you go and do transactions, when you go and transact out there to buy things in order for you to live. Now, already a person who's employed, we can see that they will pay tax. Yes, this one who's earning less will avoid payroll tax, but when they want to spend their 50,000, they have to go and incur, or they will be subjected to sales tax or VAT. And then obviously the person who's working, who's earning above the threshold, will be subjected to tax. So in these scenarios that I've discussed here, it has not been possible not to pay tax for these people. Now I want to talk about a different scenario wherein you are not employed, and let's say you are self-employed, right? You are working within your business, and in your company is trading. I think if you are familiar with companies law, and in South Africa, every company, upon registration with the CIPC, that every company in South Africa would get an income tax number, which means that from date of registration, the company is liable for taxes. So if you are self-employed, you are running your own business, and your business is making money, so there's sales, there's expenses, etc., you will likely pay tax. And I'm using the word likely carefully, because when it comes to companies only pay tax on profit. I'm talking about income tax. I'm not touching on VAT and all of those things. The company will pay tax, or will be subjected to tax, in the event that it makes a profit. Now, you as a person working within your business, so in this example of the person working within their business, now we've established that their company will only pay tax if the company makes a profit. Now, what happens if the company doesn't make a profit? If the company does not make a profit, that company will not pay income tax. And that's how it works. That's company law. The company will make what is called an assessed loss, and that loss will be rolled forward to the next financial year, and that assessed loss can be used against future tax that comes up. So in that example, if you're working within your business, number one, you will have to make a living. You have to eat. You and your business are separate. We've already established that your business will only pay tax in the event that it makes a profit. Now, the business making a loss doesn't mean that you didn't earn anything. Now, if you're working within your business, I would like to think that you would be an employee of the business as a director of the business. Now, the company by law is supposed to be paying you a salary. And within that salary, if your salary that your company is paying you is above the threshold that we just spoke about, if it's above the threshold, you as a person who's working for the company will be subjected to payroll tax. But if the company is paying you a salary that is lower than the threshold for individuals that I spoke about earlier, the 50,000 example, then you as an individual will not pay tax. You will escape payroll tax. But the question is, if you are running your business, is it sustainable now to live within an amount that is below the tax threshold? Maybe it could be for the first few years, but in the example that a person is drawing a salary of 50,000 from their business and they're not subjected to payroll tax, and over and above that, their business goes and makes a loss, that means that person, in this very simple example, would not have paid tax. They would not have paid payroll tax because they're not subjected to payroll tax. The company itself, because it made a loss, will also not be subjected to tax. But we already established that you still have to live as a person. That 50,000 that you have paid yourself as a salary, you still have to incur what? VAT. So whatever you'll be buying, you will also be paying VAT. So you have not really escaped tax. You have not really escaped the tax system. Yes, you're paying lesser tax in terms of the VAT, but also your salary is also lower. The moment you want to increase your salary within the business, then you will be subjected to payroll tax. And the moment your business becomes profitable, it will also be subjected to income tax. So we're talking about things that are being done properly and legally here. And I'm obviously using generic examples. These matters are very complex, and when you get into the detail, they are not as simple as I'm making them to seem. But I'm just using that for demonstrative purposes to discuss this point. So that's another scenario. Now, within the business context, a person can say, but I don't want a salary. I just want to draw money from the business. Now, when you draw money from the business, and let's say you didn't withhold a salary taxes from your business, that can be seen as a dividend. So if we're looking at things strictly, we could look at that as a dividend to say, okay, you've taken money from the business. There was no PAYE withheld on these funds that you transferred to yourself. Therefore, this could then be seen as you paying yourself a dividend. Now, they attract what is called dividend tax. So when you are drawing a dividend from your company, there's what is called dividend tax. So you must then be careful, or you must then be subjected in that example to dividend tax. What I've seen in practice is that people would do transfers back and forth. And I don't know, sometimes it's a loan. You find that, okay, you're starting your business, so you've got some savings personally. So you take your personal savings, transfer them into the business, and that will be let's say your capital. You've loaned the business money. Now maybe at a future point, maybe the company is paying you back that money. And I think the best thing to do in those cases is to just make sure that the referencing is updated properly. You keep your shareholders agreement, your directors loan agreement and shareholders loan agreement, to make sure that those are properly accounted for and documented. Even when SARS comes knocking, you have documented everything for those agreements, so that when you are transferring back and forth, it's in relation and in compliance with your shareholders loan agreement. But just random transfers to and from the business, or mainly from your company to yourself, because perhaps you control your company and there's no one maybe per se to look at, okay, you're paying yourself a salary without withholding. Well, that's non-compliance in a way, because the law then says that the moment there are employees in the company must register as an employer, and then it must go and withhold payroll taxes, UIF, SDL, and so on. So there are all sorts of rules as far as that is concerned. Now, that means that a person who could be earning more than the threshold and they still don't withhold tax, that means that this person, they might not be paying tax, but this might not be a legal arrangement. This might not be a legal arrangement because the moment, and I'm talking about people in business working for themselves within their own companies, the moment they ignore the processes and the rules of SARS to say, when you pay yourself a salary, you must withhold payee and pay it over to SARS, they might not be paying tax, but it's not the legal approach. It's not the correct approach. So legally speaking, is it really possible not to pay tax here in South Africa? I've covered these limited scenarios, but it's a question I get a lot, and mainly coming from these two sets of individuals: people who are in employment and people who are also running their own businesses. And the question is always, how do I not pay tax? My own personal opinion, I don't think it's possible to not pay tax, especially if you want to live. You have to live as a business person. You need to survive. You need to buy groceries at home. So you have to pay yourself some sort of a salary. And when you do that, if we are calling it a salary, then it has to attract payroll taxes, if it's higher than the threshold, of course. But can you really run a business long term, drawing a salary that's lower than that threshold that I spoke about of about 90 or so thousand? At some point, the business will grow and it will have to pay you a proper salary, market-related salary. So I don't think it's possible not to pay tax. Well, it is possible, but under those circumstances that I've described, where now you are paying VAT to offset, maybe you're not paying, in an event that you're not paying payroll taxes. But generally speaking, as people here in South Africa, we will pay tax. And as business people, we also must get used to the fact that taxes must be paid. Even when our businesses make profit, we must pay the tax that is due, because that is what the law dictates. SARS audits, SARS verifications, those are real things. So your accountants must make sure that they hold you accountable when it comes to these things. Not only hold you accountable, but also teach you how these things work, so that you also have a framework of, okay, cool, I'm starting this business, but as it grows and as it goes, I need to be following these steps to make sure that I'm protected personally as a personal or as an individual taxpayer. The company is also protected as a separate taxpayer from myself. So let me know your thoughts, guys. What are your thoughts on this particular question? And can you share with me maybe some examples that you guys have come across, or questions that you have relating to these matters? And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.